Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Finland once again, and that means, of course, that we're going to have a look at yet another beer from the latest installment of the Riku box. So, first and foremost, a massive shout out and thank you to Riku Sanexanaho, my Finnish beer mule. It's thanks to him that you guys are getting to enjoy some Finnish reviews here on the channel. Finnish beer is very difficult to get, but he always picks me out some really interesting stuff. The beers we've been through from that box already have been great, and we still have a few more to work our way through over the next little while. So really looking forward to those. I hope you guys are enjoying this series, and a massive kipis and kiitos to Riku for making these possible. But yeah, for this review, we are going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel a couple of times before. These guys, for me, are a very solid all-round brewery. I've tried quite a few different styles from them, and they've always been very good. And the one that we're going to have a look at today, I think, is a style that we haven't had from them yet. It's a beer that is supposed to be a little bit of a monster, so needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. And I should also say a very big thank you to the brewery as well, because when I went to visit them when I was in Finland in the summer, this is one that they actually gave to me to review. So yeah, big shout out to the guys at the brewery as well for making this review possible. But yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Espoo, very close to Helsinki, the Finnish capital in the south of the country, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Salama Brewing Company, or Lightning Brewing Company as it would be in English. But this particular beer is the Bourbon Barrel-aged edition of Liquid Rorschach. It comes in at 10.5% ABV, and this one is obviously a Bourbon Barrel-aged Imperial Stout. So yeah, this should be really quite nice actually. I'm very curious to see what it has in store for us. The original Liquid Rorschach is 10%, and it is very highly regarded. And when I got this beer in the summer of 2022, this was a very new, fresh release. But obviously I've sat on it for a little bit, and yeah, it only arrived maybe a month or two ago here in Sweden after Riku posted the box. But yeah, I thought this would make a very nice New Year's Day review. So as I said in the Hogmanay review that you saw yesterday, very happy New Year to all of you. Thank you for your support over the course of 2022. May it continue over 2023, and I hope you guys have a very prosperous and happy 2023 as well. But let's get cracking with this one. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review. And as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Salama Brewing Company before, and we do have a couple more beers to review from them, and you'll see more beyond that in the future as well. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and use the geography tagging system to find beer. Go to the search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, whatever. If I've reviewed beers from your local area, those should pop up. Otherwise, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries, and you'll find this one in the Finnish playlist. So yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a little bit about Salama Brewing Company once again. So yeah, Salama Brewing Company, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Espoo, in Finland, very close to Helsinki, the capital city, and the company was founded back in 2019 by a group of friends. So the men behind the company are Christian Holmlund, Jaakko Ailio, Johannes Järvinen, and Ville Sarikoski. So Christian is the CEO of the company, and he has a background in running small and medium enterprises, while Jaakko is the brewer and Johannes takes care of the bureaucracy side of things, and Ville acts as the art director of the company. But the brewery is very close to the IKEA and Jorvi Hospital out to the north of Espoo, and their brewing equipment came from China, and they have a theoretical brewing capacity of 130,000 litres of beer per year. But in the first year, they brewed only about 50,000 litres, and over the last few years, they have been expanding things. They recently opened up a terrace at the brewery itself, where you can buy some of the cans and sit out there and drink them. And Jaakko says that they're mainly going to focus on sort of lighter styles of beer such as pale ale, IPA and double IPAs and some sours, but they have of course been working on imperial stouts and barley wines and things like that, and playing around with barrel aging in recent times. And they do also have their bar in the centre of Helsinki, which is worth checking out. You can have a look at both of these places of course in my out and about video that I did at Salama Brewing. and you'll see them both there. We've tasted some really nice beers actually, and they plan eventually to export around 70% of their output. Finland, of course, is only 4 million people or so. So yeah, they will have a lot of beer that they can export abroad, and they have started doing that as well, along with the likes of Coolhead. But as of December 2022, when I've been filming this review for you, these guys have produced 175 different kinds of beer, and as we mentioned earlier too, the name Salama translates into English as lightning. So this brewery's name is effectively Lightning Brewing Company, just in Finnish. But yeah, like I said earlier as well, these guys for me are a very solid all-round brewery. When I was in Finland, I tried some really nice New England IPAs from them. I was very impressed with those. We've had a candy sour from them recently. We tried the Winter Warmer, I think was the first beer. Yeah, these guys are just a very solid all-round brewery in my opinion. And the two beers that we're going to try later after this one are more kind of brown sugary type things, so I'm very curious to see what they're going to be like too. But yeah, this will be the first Imperial Stout I think that we're reviewing from these guys. But yeah, I've had very good experiences with this brewery in the past. So that's everything I can really tell you about Salama Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can, of course, check out the Untappd page to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, that's everything we need to say about the brewery. Let's have a little look at the beer itself. So, as you can see, the artwork on this one is really quite nice. You can see the Salama lightning cloud in the middle, and that of course is the symbol of the brewery. You can see it clearly on the back of the can here. This is one of these silver cans, so the camera is automatically going to hate this thing. But it tells you a little bit about the beer on the back here. And I will point out that this is a special version of the original liquid Rorschach beer that they did, which was a 10% Imperial Stout. But it says here, manifestation of decadence and debauchery, indulging pastry stout that forces you to face the hidden desires of your mind, bourbon barrel aged with a blend of rich chocolate, pure vanilla and roasted coconut flakes. And the graphics, of course, are by Ville Sarikoski. So yeah, this beer I think is named after the Rorschach test, which is the one that you see where they put, you know, dots on and make a kind of painting out of it, and then assess how someone perceives the dots. So yeah, that's what this is named after, the Rorschach psychological dot test, I guess you could call it. But this one, as we said, it is 10.5% ABV. I did write down the two barrels it was aged in. It's been aged for 1 year in Heaven Hill and Buffalo Trace bourbon barrels, so it should be quite nice. I have no idea what this beer would have actually cost, because they wouldn't let me pay for it. I did offer to pay for the beers that they gave me, but yeah, it ended up being the big malty ones that I took when I was there, because those are the ones that would last. But yeah, I think they gave me like 4 beers when I was at Salama Brewing, if I remember correctly, and they were all big beasts. But yeah, I don't know what this beer would actually cost if you bought it, so unfortunately I can't really comment on that. But it's a 440ml can, this one. I would guess that in Finland this would cost maybe, it's got to cost at least, you know, 10 euros, something like that. But 10.5% bourbon barrel aged Imperial Stout, you know, this is a bit of a treat, this one, and a very good beer to start off 2023 with. So let's get this guy out into the glass and see what we have. The bourbon barrel aged liquid Rorschach from Salama Brewing Company in Espoo, Finland. I have been looking forward to this one, I have to say that. This should be very nice. You can smell, this thing is a big boozy bastard. You can smell that right away. Yeah, so I think we've got maybe about 80% of the beer out into the glass at the moment. And yeah, this does look very nice. So before the head disappears on this one, because I think that's not going to hold, you could see that when we poured this beer, it had about a finger of a frothy, I would actually say quite dark tan coloured head, and you can see the bubbles on this one are actually quite, you know, you've got some medium-sized bubbles at the bottom there and a few bigger ones going further up. But yeah, 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there, and you can see the head has just faded away to be about 1/3 of its original size at the moment, but it does look nice. When this beer is 10.5%, you wouldn't, and it's barrel aged as well, you wouldn't expect the head to hang around all that much. But yeah, 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there. But yeah, this beer itself, in terms of its colour, if we shine the light through it, you do get a little hint of that kind of Pepsi Max, Coca-Cola coloured edge to it, but there's not a lot going on with this one in terms of it. In terms of other colours there, this one is pretty much black as night. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do and any adjuncts that you put in can affect the colour of the beer as well. But when it comes to black beers, like Imperial Stouts, where you've got special B, black malt or something like that involved, it's very difficult to actually affect the colour of the beer with the barrel aging or adjuncts. That plays more of a role in kind of Scotch ales and barley wines and quadruples and stuff like that, where the beer is more a kind of brown colour. But yeah, this one, not a lot of light coming through this. It is pretty hazy. If I remember correctly, this one does contain, it says it contains wheat and oats, which makes sense. So yeah, that's probably the reason why you're not getting any real transparency to this beer and why it is pretty much black as night. But you can see the head has faded away. Nice just thin foamy ring around the edge of the glass and a little tiny little island in the middle of it. But yeah, it does look pretty nice, this one. I don't think we need to say anything else about the appearance of this beer. I think we've covered it quite well. So it's probably time that we move on to the aroma and just have a little look at this. So let's do it. Very curious to see what this is going to have in store for us. Oh yeah, this thing is an absolute monster, as I thought it would be. Yeah, this beer just smells absolutely beautiful. Yeah, this is absolutely lovely. So you can smell the, you can smell this just gives you everything you'd expect. I was expecting this to be like quite a sweet sort of cakey Imperial Stout, and it certainly is that, but the bourbon barrels really balance it out very well. I've said this on the channel before, I'm not a massive fan of the pastry styles of beers, pastry stouts and pastry sours. The thing that really put me off the pastry stouts quite a lot of the time is the kind of granola flavour that you can get from them at times. For me, I'd much rather go for an Imperial Milk Stout, an Imperial Coffee Stout, or an old school RIS. That's just me. But I have had some pastry stouts in recent times that have been very, very impressive actually, and I've got a feeling that this one might well be very nice in that sense as well. But the aroma of this, I have to say it is just lovely. I'd be very curious to try the original without the barrel aging too, but I don't know how possible that's going to be. We have to take what we get from Finland, right enough. But yeah, aroma wise, this is absolutely lovely. So let's try and break. I'm just going to say straight away, this is a very smooth, very kind of silky, cakey Imperial Stout, this one. We have to say that straight away. But let's try and break this down for you and just describe it that wee bit more in depth. So the backbone of the beer for me, you absolutely smell that smooth American oak. I've always said American oak is a little bit smoother for me. You've got a little bit of vanilla in there, but of course you've got the bourbon brown sugars. And as I've said before, American bourbon for me is a lot sweeter than Scotch whisky is. Scotch whisky is a bit more dry and grainy and things like this, but the American bourbon's always been very smooth and very sweet. So yeah, you get the smooth American oak, the little bit of vanilla, the bourbon sugar sitting on top of that, and then you start to get everything else in this one. So above that, you have what smells like a layer of, Swedish kladkirke. I don't know what the Finns would call it, but you've got this kind of Swedish kladkirke chocolate brownie, really dense, but still quite oily chocolate brownie character. You've got that in there. There's a little bit of dry cocoa nib as well. And the chocolate that you get out of this beer, the chocolatey notes you get out of this beer, it's kind of interesting because toward the front of the nose you've got a more milky chocolate, a sort of 40-ish% cocoa, but further back you certainly get some of the darker chocolate, a 70-ish, 80% cocoa. You can smell the coconut in there for sure. That's mixing in with the bourbon brown sugars and that kind of cakey layer that I was talking about. And there is an element of brown sugar in this beer as well. Like in the dead centre of your nose, there's a sweet treacly molasses sort of thing. So yeah, lovely sweet treacle molasses. Other than that, there's a little bit, you do get a tiny little bit of biscuit with this one, some more oily caramel, yeah, sweet caramel, treacle molasses, and you've also got that, yeah, sweet treacle molasses, oily caramel, a little bit of biscuit, and yeah, the way everything goes together, I think, is really nice. Yeah, you do get more. I do get like some kind of pecans or almonds out of this as well as the coconut, but it's mainly, as I say, that kind of big Swedish kladdkaka, chocolate brownie type notes, some dry cocoa nib on top of it, lots of kind of yeah, definitely lots of like highly caramelized treacle molasses, sweet caramel in there, a little bit of a toasty brown sugar as well. And other than that, there's maybe little elements of like tobacco in there too. That some of the aromas you get out of this beer really reminds me of tobacco. It's got a little bit of an almost phenolic thing going on as well, like a sort of brandy soaked bread. Maybe there's a little touch of rye bread in this beer as well, but it's very oily how everything goes together in this one. I think that covers everything we need to say about the more malty side of the aroma. When it comes to the hoppy side of things, though, there are a few interesting things going on. We have to point out as well, this is an Imperial Stout, which is not the most hop-forward style of beer. It has been bourbon barrel-aged as well, so a lot of the hoppy character will have dropped out of this. But personally, I think there are still the remnants of a green component to this beer. So, for me, there's a tiny little bit of earthiness in there, there's a little bit of floral character, but you do get just this little bit, that the most prominent point, or the most prominent element of the the most prominent element of the aroma, the green component in this beer is the grassiness. The grassiness is actually really quite bright, I have to say. Yeah, so aroma wise, I think this beer is really quite nice in that sense. Yeah, lovely little bit of bright grassiness in there, and behind that you've got the fruity notes of the beer. So let's just look at the fruity side of the beer to round off the aroma. For me, you definitely get a little bit, there is a little touch of this raisiny sharpness to the beer, but I would say that's very, very little. There's a lot of plum, there is a bit of prune in there, but I'm also getting a lot of the kind of datey character as well. There's a lot of prune and date in there, which is the more dried fruity note, but within that you have this kind of phenolic element, you know, brandy soaked cake. It's really like a brandy soaked fruit loaf as well. It's really like that. Yeah, so the aroma in this one, the fruity side of things is really nice. As I say, a little bit of raisin, a little bit of plum, but yeah, prunes and dates for sure. There's a little bit of an oily pear in there as well. Some sultana, definitely. You know, dry white green grapes. But black currants, a little bit of blackberry. Yeah, the aroma coming out of this beer, I think, is very, very nice. Yeah, gets a big, big thumbs up from me, I have to say that. The aroma of this one really is quite interesting. So, as I always say, take a wee bit of time to just enjoy the aroma of the beers before you get stuck into them, because it's always an experience. But we'll get the rest of this guy into the glass, and I'm going to sit and sip on this for the rest of the day and do some more programming, because I need a little bit of inspiration, should we say. So yeah, let's have a taste of this. This one is the Bourbon Barrel Aged Liquid Rorschach, an Imperial Stout at 10.5% ABV, aged for a year in Buffalo Trace and what was the other one? Heaven Hill barrels from Salama Brewing Company in Espoo, Finland. Happy New Year 2023, guys. I hope you have a great year. Slange, skål, cheers, and keep us. Let's do this. That is really nice, actually. Yeah, it's interesting because it does have that pastry stout element to it, but underneath you do still get a little bit of that kind of old school RIS dryness and bitterness. But I think, yeah, we do need a little, that's just a first impression of it. So yeah, we do need to kind of let the flavour of this one evolve a little bit and see what's going on. So yeah, that really is quite interesting with this beer. At the same time, you know, you've got this, the barrel aged side of it, you've got a bit of the dryness in there, a bit of the roastiness and things. You do get the pastry and cakey element out of it. You've got a wee green component to it, and you have got these lovely fruity notes. I'm just going to say, this is a really, it strikes me as a very well-rounded Imperial Stout, this one. I'm not a massive fan of the pastry stouts, as I told you, but this one, it really, I think it does have that pastry stout element to it, but it doesn't let the kind of sweetness and cakiness dominate the flavour as quite a number of pastry stouts that I've tried do. So they've managed to balance this beer out pretty damn well, I have to say. I like that with this. Yeah, all I can say is thumbs up to Salama Brewing for pulling off a pretty damn solid beer. You really can't knock this one in any way. So let's have a wee look at this properly and just see what it's all about. It's got a lovely smoothness and silkiness to it, and yeah, it's all about how these flavours just blend together and come out. So let's have a wee look at the middle third of your palate in this beer then. So backbone of the beer is, of course, the lovely smooth American oak. No question about that. Lovely smooth American oak sitting there. Toward the front of that middle third of your palate, you can feel there's a little touch of vanilla and smoothness and sweetness in there. But above that, you can feel there's just that layer of sweet bourbon brown sugar. Absolutely. And that goes together really quite nicely. Above that, I do get a little bit of a roasty, toasty, slightly well-fired black malt. There is a little bit of that going on, definitely. But then you get that really dense layer of kladdkaka, Swedish chocolate cake type thing. You can feel that really dense layer in there. Within that as well, particularly toward the front of the middle third of your palate, that's when you really get the coconut. But I would also argue there are wee elements of like pecans and almonds and these other types of nuts in there. I'm not familiar with the exact flavours of all these different nuts. It's, you know, I never really think to eat nuts, to be honest with you. But there certainly are elements of other nuts mixed in with that, which is quite interesting. But you absolutely have this, dense kind of cakey layer. Yeah, it's like kladdkaka muffins, things like this. Yeah, dense kladdkaka chocolate cake, all of that. I think it's really nice how all of that kind of pieces together in this one for me. I really like how everything kind of pieces together in this beer. And the coconut, it sort of has the coconut base, but then there's a wee bit of almond and pecan and stuff like that. And it's kind of got what I imagine to be a little bit of a kind of tobacco-y type flavour to it as well. The flavour that you get off of this really reminds me of the tobacco that we used to play with in the analytical lab. Tobacco, as bad as it is for you, it really does have a lovely smell. So yeah, it's definitely got a wee bit of this kind of almost tobacco-y type flavour in it as well that comes out more in the aftertaste. But above the kind of cakey layer, toward the back of that middle third of your palate, you do get a little bit of this really dry cocoa nibby sort of thing, and you can feel the chocolate layer as well, and it sort of transitions as you move forward on the palate. So at the back of that middle third of your palate, you do have this really roasty, toasty, well fired. You have this really roasty, toasty, well fired dark chocolate, 80-90% cocoa, something like that. But as you move further forward, you can feel it gradually just mellows out a little bit. Although I would say it doesn't mellow out all that much. It's maybe like towards 60%, but you can feel it gets slightly brighter as you come further forward on the palate. And as I've always said, more bitter, dry flavours come out further back on the palate, the sweeter flavours come out further forward, but you can definitely feel that dry sort of chocolatey layer. But in the middle of your tongue, you have this circle where the brown sugars come out. So let's just focus on that just now. And of course, the middle third of your palate in an Imperial Stout is always the most complex part of the beer. So yeah, so in the middle third of your palate, you can feel that circle in the middle there where the brown sugars come out. So you can feel the base of that. You have got a little bit of that leathery brown sugar, which indicates a slightly longer wort boil. So a little bit of leathery character in there. On top of that though, there's a bit of a more you've got that leathery layer. You've got a bit more of a kind of highly caramelized treacle molasses kind of character, but then on top of all of that, you do get a little bit of a sweet caramel. You can feel the brown sugars are very layered in this one, which is quite interesting. But yeah, I think other than that and the dryness of the brown sugar, I think that's everything that we really need to say about the the middle third of your palate in this beer. It's really quite nice, just a big thick oily bugger, this one, so gets a big thumbs up for me. It's very nice kind of dessert stout, to be honest with you. So yeah, let's look at the back third of your palate in this beer and see what's going on there. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of that bready build up again. So wee bit of that going on, lovely kind of bready character there. But then the base of the back third of your palate, you have this how would you say, you have this more kind of dryness. You have more of a dryness to the wood. And as I've always said, yeah, bitter, more dry flavours come out further back on the palate, the sweeter ones come out further forward, but you can feel that the wood from the bourbon barrel is definitely drier. The brown sugars are a little bit drier as well. Above that, the roasty black malt has a wee bit more bitterness to it. You've got the cakey layer. Yeah, you have the cakey layer too, which is great. And the cakey layer for me, it's interesting. It has a wee bit more of a kind of just dryness and fluffiness to it on that back third of the palate, but it's certainly taller and more airy. Then you have a kind of the chocolatey layer, and again, it's really well fired in that sense. And then the base above that, you do have this little bit of a kind of more airy white bread, so yeah, you've got the wood, you've got the bourbon sugars, you've got the cakey side of things, you've got a little bit of the kind of high percentage cocoa chocolate dryness in there. Then above that, you have the you've got the more airy yeasty kind of notes coming out of the beer. So yeah, so the more airy yeasty side of things, let's just focus on that for a minute. Yeah, the more airy yeasty side of the beer is definitely like, it's definitely got a little bit more of this kind of sweet, like brandy soaked bread kind of character to it. There's a little bit of honeycomb and a bit of brown sugar there, but yeah, at the back, on the back third of the palate, that is most definitely there. So you can feel this lovely kind of tall brown bready layer. Then as you come further forward, it just condenses down as you move into the middle third of your palate. You always get this in beers, to be honest with you. The flavour on the back third of the palate is a lot taller than the middle third of your palate. But I think we've said everything we need about the malty and yeasty and barrel side of this beer, to be honest. Let's look at the hoppy side of things and the fruits then. So as I say, this is a bourbon barrel aged beer. Imperial Stouts are not the most hop forward style. It's actually very smooth on the side of the palate, but you do get a good little bit of earthiness there. As you move further forward, it has a little touch of a herbal character to it, and as you push toward the front kind of corners of the palate there, it's got a little bit more it does have a little bit more of a kind of floral aromatic sort of thing with it. So yeah, but round the front curve of the tongue, there's a little bit of a smooth grassy element to it. But yeah, the green component in this beer is not overly big, which you kind of expect for the style, and as well, because it's bourbon, it's barrel aged. Any barrel aging takes away a little bit of the green component. So Yeah, on the, I think that covers it, but on the fruity side of things then, we'll focus on that front third of your palate. The border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of a bready build up in there. You've got that nice kind of, as I say, you've got that nice sort of chocolate brownie Cladcarca type thing in the base of the front third of your palate. You've got a little bit of the woodiness, you've got a little bit of the bourbon sugar, and then yeah, a little bit of the, you do actually get a little bit of the kind of Cladcarca thing, and then you've got that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll the way out of the beer. I'd be very curious to know what hops they would use in this one, actually, to get the fruity notes that are in this beer. But yeah, fruity side of the beer is kind of, as we were picking up in the aroma, there was a lot of stuff going on with this one. So yeah, when you take the beer in, you do get this little touch of raisiny sharpness in the beginning and a wee touch of plum, but really it leans more toward that kind of dry, pruny, datey sultana note. If you look at the back half of that front third of your palate, it's all about the dates, the prunes, the sultanas, but behind that, in that border region, you have this, you really do have this kind of brandy soaked bread type note, which is really interesting. So yeah, above the brandy soaked bread, you've got the sultana, you know, the dry white green grapes. You've got the dates, you've got the kind of prunes in there. There's maybe a bit of an oily pear. So yeah, it's really about the dry fruits and the kind of phenolic type quality there. You really have this kind of cakey, Christmas puddingy type vibe toward the back of that front third of your palate. But as you move further forward towards the middle, there's a little bit of an oily fig in there. You do start to get a little bit of a black currant as well, and there's also just a wee touch of blackberry coming out of this beer, which I have to say I do quite like. Yeah, the aroma, the flavours that you get out of this are really quite nice in a sense. I do like how that pieces together. But yeah, it really is quite a sweet, smooth, and silky stout. This one, just with a lot of dry, fruity character. It really reminds me of like a boozy chocolate cake or a, yeah, it's kind of like a boozy chocolate cake or a yeah, like just a Christmas pudding, something like that. So interesting stuff. But let's round off this review with a wee look at the mouthfeel then. So mouthfeel wise, this thing is definitely full bodied. The carbonation is very, very smooth. Like I've said a few times, it's got this very silky, oily mouthfeel to it. In terms of IBUs, it's a little bit hard to place because you have got quite a bit of dryness and roastiness in this beer as well. Maybe it's along the lines of about 50-ish. Maybe it's about 50-ish IBUs, but like I say, the dryness and roastiness that the beer has could make you think it's a wee bit higher. So 40 or 50 IBUs, I think is about reasonable because some of the black malt's giving you a bit of bitterness, the dryness, and so on. So yeah, need to think about that a wee bit. But in terms of the malty base in this beer, as I said, you've got a bit of dryness from the wood, you've got a bit of kind of toastiness and sweetness from the spirit. You've got the cakey notes to it, so you've got the savoury umami side. You've also got a wee bit of the sweetness and things. The most complex part of this beer is, of course, the malty. The interaction between the malty, the yeasty, and the barrel side of the beer. Hoppy bitterness is not too apparent in this, but a lot of oily, dry, fruity character to it as well, which is really nice. But overall, it's a really, really interesting beer. This one, I have enjoyed it. It is quite heavy. I can feel it going to my head, but when you have a 10.5% bourbon barrel aged Imperial pastry stout, you know that's going to happen. It is going to happen, but Salama Brewing have pulled off another really nice beer here. This is my first Imperial Stout from them, if I remember correctly. So yeah, definitely not disappointed. So I'd like to try something a wee bit more old school from them, like an Imperial Milk Stout or an old school RIS going forward. So I'll speak to Riku and see what we can sort out. But yeah, Salama have done a really nice job with this, so it gets a big thumbs up from me. So yeah, I think we can sign off from this review. So this was the Bourbon Barrel Aged edition of liquid Rorschach and Imperial Stout aged in bourbon barrels for a year from Salama Brewing Company in Espoo. Coughing up there. in Espoo, near Helsinki in Finland. A lovely beer, this one. And like I say, we've got 2 more Salama reviews to do in the fairly near future. But once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Salama Brewing Company, and we will return to these guys very, very shortly. The next 2 beers that we have from them are monsters as well, and I'm certainly looking forward to them. But Slanjit, Skull, cheers, keep his ketos, check out my social media, check out Salama's social media, and I'll see you guys in the next review.